Hello and welcome to the first episode of the SSQ Podcast. I'm your host, Ben Quarry, and today I'm joined by Valentina Dunn, one half of the leadership of our market-leading PPA or Private Practice Associate team here in London. Valentina, why don't you tell us, first of all, a little bit about the team, what we do, and your role in it?
Sure. Hello. I'm part of the private practice team. I co-lead it with Danny D'Aquino. And basically what our team does is help associates from the NQ level all the way up to day one partner look at roles within the private practice market in London. And when I say that, I also kind of mean the total scope of firms that they could look at. So we do a lot of strategic work with US law firms who are looking to grow in London. We also work with the Magic Circle, with Silver Circle firms, and also with West End Boutique. So I think the kind of long and short of it is we're a good barometer for activity across the market. So that's what the private practice associate team does in London.
And talks about how big the team is in terms of how many people, what sort of range of firms exactly do we cover, in terms of give people a sense of, as you say, how broad the practice really is.
So how many people are in the team? We've got about 15 fee earners, and that's kind of fresh graduates who've come through our resourcing scheme. And in fact, I actually started the resourcing scheme, and I think you did too.
I did as well.
Once upon a time.
A depressingly long time ago.
And so we've got about 15 people who are dedicated to that. And the way that it works is we all manage our own clients, but when a role comes through, we all have access to that opportunity. So we as individuals manage our associates and we pitch them the roles that we're working on. But just because I'm managing X amount of firms, it doesn't mean that those candidates do not also have access to the roles that my colleagues are also managing. I think the reason that we have one point of contact for each firm is really to give the best service to the client so they know who the go-to is.
Yep.
And essentially what happens is the role comes through and that individual then pitch that position to the rest of the team and, circulate the notes, circulate the job description so people are equipped with the information that they need to go to market properly and represent the opportunity properly.
And I guess the same is true probably because candidates will only have one point of contact as well.
Exactly.
That they've got one person, and then both sides, whether you are a law firm or whether you're a candidate, you have the multiplier effect that you talk to one person, but they have a team of 15 behind them. Yes. So actually, your
behind
CV,
the scenes.
Exactly. There's an entire operation going on. So actually, in terms of kind of offering that, and something that we really pride ourselves on, right, is the fact that we're about relationships with both the individuals and with the law firms. We actually think that's the best way that we can be the best recruiters you can be out in the market, right? You have to build that trust, you have to build that rapport, and ultimately you have to understand what the individual person wants, and also what the law firm wants, and hopefully, if we do our jobs right, we're professionally matchmaking in a way that that means that sort of the right people are talking to the right firms.
Totally.
And I guess so just touch on that relationship point, because I do think that's something that is a little bit different about the way that we do things compared to some of the other recruiters, because there are plenty of recruiters out there in the market. Some of them are specialists like we are in terms of only focusing on legal. Others are broader but have legal arms. I genuinely think one of the things that makes us quite different, and I don't know if you agree with this, is we are not about just trying to do a deal ASAP just for the sake of getting someone over the line and doing a deal. We'd actually probably rather take a little bit longer to get the right fit, both sides, because actually something that is the right fit means that person hopefully never needs to move again, right? But it does mean that they will say, actually, I want to stay in touch with you because I want to introduce people in the future and things like that. And so really we pride ourselves, right, on the role of the recruiter in the sort of, not just the actual moving from A to B, but actually the ongoing relationship and the sort of service that we can offer them beyond just telling them where they could send their CV. So talk to me a little bit about, the value of having a recruiter in a process, because obviously, everyone knows who these law firms are.
Yes.
They could, in theory, email whoever and just say, here's my CV, let's go there. Talk to me, why should someone think about using a recruiter?
So I think kind of rewinding back a bit, often with the way that we make approaches, it's for a kind of targeted approach. So I've come across their profile. It's usually publicly available information that I have access to. And, there are times when we are given an individual to go after by the firm. And so, you can call them, but I have no idea what their personal circumstances are. Mm-hmm. And in all likelihood, they are very happy and well taken care of where they are at the moment. Annoyingly, if only, but, then what would be, it would, life would be much simpler. But yes, so often that happens. They're like, do you know what, not for me, thanks for the approach. But then I have a wider conversation with them about what their career ambitions are and questioning whether or not the platform they are on at the moment is actually the right one for them long term. And I think, when we're talking to people, I'm also very mindful of the fact that they've committed, especially in circumstances where you've joined a firm as a trainee, so you've gone through the tremendous effort of getting the training contract in the first place, and then you qualify and you get the spot that you wanted in the right team. That's worth its weight in gold, and that's the course, and it will change the trajectory of your life and your practice. And if you've been there since then and have qualified into the team and have built up all this goodwill, whether that be at the 2 PQE mark or even at the NQ mark, kind of going back, or at 5 or 6 or 7 years qualified, I'm really alive to that and what someone risks in making a move. And sometimes actually the approach is they'll go to market to help them to inform that the place that they're at the moment is the right one for them, which is not a wasted exercise. And I'm much longer term and much longer kind of with the relationships that we build. I think if it is short term, it's very obvious to the candidate that all I'm looking to do here is sell the role and make a quick buck. And I don't think people respond well to that. And I actually don't like working like that at all. I'd much rather take the time to get to know them. And hopefully with my market intel, I can think about what might be appropriate. So that requires listening, and it also, I think, requires having, information, which is hopefully our value add.
Yeah. I definitely think listening, it should not be a superpower in the world of recruitment, because it should be at least half of what you're doing the entire time. But the barrier to entry for this profession is quite low. And so actually, if you stop and you listen first and then you react to what someone says, as opposed to just saying, well, I've got this list of 5 firms that I want to talk to you about, and even though you've told me you're not interested in ABC, I'm still going to talk to you about them. If you try and persuade someone to do something they don't want to do, they're going to stop talking to you very quickly, right?
We're also dealing with very clever people.
Yeah.
Lawyers are very risk adverse, and I don't want to generalise, but I think it's probably fair to say that they're risk adverse. And again, I think it goes back to the point of how hard they've had to work to get to where they are. So I kind of try to put myself in their shoes as best we can. And if someone was trying to, push an agenda or speak to me, I've said to you that I'm looking for a better work-life balance and I'm selling US law firms where the billable target's 2,000 hours plus. You're wasting everyone's time. You're also wasting the client's time, because I don't think it reflects very well on clients when someone's pushing roles that are inappropriate for them. I think when you go to market, it has to be delivered in a way that feels, I don't know, appropriate.
I think you have to give...
And not aggressive, I think, is the point.
I think you're completely right. And I think you have to give a complete picture of what an opportunity entails, right? Course. Because if you sugarcoat it, if you just tell them the good bits and you don't tell them the bad, because these guys work a lot of these guys work pretty tough hours, right? Yes. A lot of them get paid very well as well. Yes. And it's not necessarily directly correlated that more money means more hours, although often there is a correlation between the two. But actually, if you tell someone just the good bits and not the bad bit, first of all, they'll be found out in the interview process, right? They're going to find out that you're sort of pulling the wool over their eyes to begin with, right? And you're going to undermine your own credibility. But let's say they get through a process, they get an offer, they accept it, and then they start, and then they find out what it's really like. They're going to be looking to move pretty quickly if you have missold them something.
Total waste of
everyone's time. And you can be sure they're not going to pick up the phone to you to say, will you please move me? Because you've fooled them once already.
I know, I totally agree. And also looking at it from a client's perspective, it's like, I've just spent all this time interviewing this individual. They haven't had the full picture. And then, they've then paid our recruitment fees and the person leaves within a year. That's not a job well done.
Yeah,
the hope is when you move the person that it is their next long-term home. And I think that that's a hope for both parties. Yeah. So I don't think sugarcoating, and I also again, we go back to the point, lawyers are very smart people.
They'll see through it. They'll see straight. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
It probably is.
And talk to me. So obviously, the main thing we do, right, is we move lawyers from one place to another, and all sorts of directions that can move in, right? But obviously, the relationship that we have with the individual lawyers, it's not that every time we talk to them, we're sort of saying, right, you need to move now or anything like that, because as you say, we're not pushy. We want to kind of have that long-term relationship. So there's obviously lots of other services, whether it be benchmarking, whether it be sort of helping them sound out their ideas about ultimately where they want to get to. Might not need a move short term, but if they want to get access to certain sectors or certain types of clients, there may need to be a little bit of rejigging, even if it's internal. And obviously because of the long-term approach, we take a slightly more strategic view to the way we advise people. And again, I really stress that we advise people rather than sell to people, because this job would be very boring if we were just a postbox full CV. So, let's talk a little bit about some of the extra things that individuals can come to us to ask about that perhaps their own firms will tell them some things about how the real world works, but every time the firm tells them what we're doing is market standard, they'll obviously be defining the market as however suits their whatever they want to be saying, right? So let's talk about some of the examples of some of the things that we can, or additional services we can offer people that can be useful beyond just talking about the market and helping them get their CVs out places.
I think a part of it's all like progression is an area where even at that kind of 5 PQE mark, people are talking to us about what their route internally looks like and what they need to do to get to where they need to get to. And whether that be kind of pivoting to focus on a particular sector, or how do I approach having the conversation with my supervisor or talking to partners. Because I've had enough conversations with people who all have this similar issues internally, although I've never been a practicing lawyer, I've certainly never gone on, to the path to partnership. So my understanding of it is limited to the anecdotes that I've heard, but the same themes seem to come up. So I think kind of talking through that has been, for many of the candidates that I've worked with, very helpful.
Yeah.
Even if it's just being used as a sounding board,
And sometimes actually they are hearing the right things, and you say to them, look, you're onto a good thing here.
Totally.
You should always be cynical. Whenever you're talking to businesses, you've got to remember they are businesses.
Yes.
And ultimately they will make business decisions. But if you're hearing the right things, if you're in the right place at the right time, sometimes the advice is you're doing the right thing. Keep on doing it. And again, the way that we build that rapport and build that trust, right, is that we are not just thinking about, well, how do we try and unseat you? We want to advise people properly.
Yes.
Because actually, we'd much rather someone wants to talk to us in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years' time.
Yeah.
Because I think the other thing that's actually is a very nice way that kind of rewards our sort of MO in terms of not being pushy, but actually trying to understand someone is, by virtue of how the legal market works, lawyers, year on year, typically there is if they stay within private practice, typically there is a linear, it might not be directly linear, but progression that in 5 years' time they're going to be more senior, they're going to be more influential than they are right now. And obviously ultimately, if they become a partner somewhere, they may even have to hire. And actually sometimes you're talking to people who you might have been talking to from the day that they qualified or just in the run-up to qualification, and suddenly they're picking up the phone to you and saying, Valentina, actually I want to chat, but it's not for me to move, it's because I want to hire. And again, it's one of those very nice sort of full circle moments, right? That if you do the right thing, if you advise properly and fairly, and be an honest broker, which again should not be a superpower, it should be the bare minimum. But you'd be amazed. Well, maybe you wouldn't be amazed at how many cowboys are out there who will sort of tell you what they think you want to hear, as opposed to actually advise you properly.
Yeah, and I think as well, kind of the biggest compliment is when people give us referrals. So I'm not going to move, but I've valued your time and your insight. My friend or my colleague or whoever it might be is looking to move. Can I put you in touch? Yeah. I don't know the percentage, but I would say at this stage in my career, probably 50%. Maybe less, maybe slightly more, but thereabouts have been referrals. And I think a part of that comes from doing this job for a long time. Like I've been in the business.
And doing it well as well, presumably.
Thank you. But, I've been doing it for 8 years. So you build this network and it sort of starts to work. And I remember when I joined the team, you had said that to me all those moons ago. And I think that is the kind of biggest compliment. Yeah. But going back to I think the point of what we offer candidates above and beyond selling them roles and opportunities. Obviously, there's salary benchmarking. There's, how the bonus systems work at different firms and whether or not what they are doing internally is fair in comparison to other places. I'm thinking of other things that we offer them. Obviously, there's like interview prep, but that's when they've kind of started actively engaging in the market.
But I do think it's important, though, because some of these people, they may be at the same firm that they applied to when they were in the second year of university, and they've been there ever since, and they've not thought about writing a CV for donkey's years. They've not even thought about the last interview they did. It was on their way from university to the law, down to London for the the big interview, and they sort of go, I promise I'm commercially aware. I promise I read the Financial Times every day as I'm eating my cornflakes. And at that point, the law firms are looking at them and saying, yeah, we think you're bright, we think you're the raw materials, right?
Yes.
But at this stage, later further down the line, they've got a lot of experience they bring. But I think there can be the sort of the idea that I'm still being quizzed, I'm still being tested. It's like it becomes much more of a conversation, right? In terms of sort of at that stage, and again, helping someone prepare for that, I think is pretty useful in terms of if it's the first time they've done it for a long time.
Yeah, and I think interviews are like the most unnatural, weird
dynamic. Like
podcast, right? Yeah, kind of like a podcast. No, in interviews, and that's something that I kind of think about again, like this is our job. A lot of our job is helping people through that process. But sometimes I have those moments where I'm like, actually, interviews are dead weird, because they're obviously a necessary part, but like in any normal circumstance or day, you're not doing that. You might be pitching to win work somewhere or whatever it might be, having difficult client calls. I understand it. But in terms of actually selling yourself and your experience and why what your experience looks like aligns with what they're looking for and having, because it's a two-way street. It's tricky, especially as you say, the last time you did it was when you were in your second year of university or doing the LPC, whenever it might be. I think it's kind of reminding people of going back to basics and also reminding people the fact that you've been invited to the interview, it's a good starting point, right? On paper, they think this person's worth our time to talk to. So yeah, I think it's also giving people sometimes a bit of a confidence boost of like, you've got this, and making sure that I think the confidence comes from being in a position where they feel properly prepared or as best they can be. We can give them steers as to what the technical questions might look like and what that process might look like, but also help them to inform, right, why is it that this firm is particularly interesting to you? And because we have all that intel above and beyond the job description and Legal 500 that everybody has access to, I think we can help them think about refining that approach, which, I mean, hopefully that's useful.
Well, I think the other thing on the interview perspective, is that a lot of the people who are interviewing the candidates, the partners or the counsel or whoever it may be, right? A lot of the time we know them on a personal level because we may have placed them at the firm that they're, that this new candidate is now interviewing. So actually it's not just you're meeting with John Smith and he's like this. His practice looks like this. It's actually you're meeting with John, you're meeting with Brenda, you're meeting with Sam, whoever, and John's going to be he's going to be a tough bad cop. He's going to be very technical, whereas actually the other two, they're just going to it's going to be a nice chat, and actually just having that kind of even just that prep that this guy's going to be a little bit, he's going to be a little bit more of a taskmaster with this stuff. Actually, it then means when you get into the interview, you're expecting it and you're a little bit better prepared. Yes, totally. And I think the other thing that actually, in terms of kind of talking about how we're useful within the process as well, the other thing that actually I think we can add a lot of value is, particularly as you get to the end of a process, well, actually during the process, right, there's the whole thing of a candidate may have multiple different processes going on at one time, and in an ideal world they would all run completely concurrently and you'd end up with X number of offers on the table at the same time and you'd just be choosing one between the other, right? Perfect world does not exist. The reality is that they'll be moving at different speeds, they'll have different stages. And so, again, there is a strategy for the individual behind how do we try and kind of make this work. There's also a strategy for the law firm, advising the law firm as well, to be like, okay, this is what you need to do. Yeah, this is what the candidate wants. This is the candidate's concerns. Here's how you can do. And sometimes it's very simple things like saying actually can you get one of the partners to give them a call just at the end of the process, obviously, just to deliver the offer personally. Yes. It's little touches like that actually guiding whether it be the law firm to where what the candidate needs, or actually again advising the candidate on how to best get you to where you need to get to. You can actually really add a lot of value during the process, and at the end of the process, I mean, you and I have this fairly frequently, right? That you get to an end, someone's very excited, they have an offer on the table, and they go, "This is brilliant. I have a question. I'm walking away from a bonus," or I think I should get a sign on, or actually I've got a big holiday booked and I want to make sure that I'm protected, or I don't know, I've signed up to this course that I really want to do and my current firm's paying for it and I'd have to pay it back. There's all sorts of things that come up, right? And very often you can find a sensible solution that works for everyone in terms of making sure the deal happens at the end of it. But you've also got to be quite level-headed and actually balanced when you're talking to the candidates to say, okay, well, which of these is the priority? And actually, sometimes you have to say to them, you're getting an uplift, you're getting X, Y, Z. That's like all great. Yes. you're still asking for more, and it's like, why? You're asking more for the sake of asking more.
Yes.
And often we obviously advise both sides, but we always say to the candidate, the more the candidate gets paid, the more we are incentivized in terms of the way that our fees work and things like that. So we're always trying to get the best deal for them, and we're trying to get the best deal for the law firm.
Yes.
But ultimately, we will also tell them if they are trying to be a little bit too. Yeah, it's like, actually, this is not a conversation you want to have. To the extent that there are difficult conversations to have, having a recruiter be that middleman and being able to sort of push things both ways as far as they can be pushed, again, depending on who is controlling the conversation. And then actually making sure that because you've got us as a middleman, you don't have an awkward conversation where the individual candidate has pushed too hard and the law firm sort of
it sours things.
Exactly. And so I think there's other value adds throughout the process, whether it be, as you say, at the very before you even start a process, all the way through to the end of how do we make this work, that if you are applying directly, great, you get your CV off, and are you going to be chasing the person you've emailed every week to say what's going on? Are you looking at my CV? It's just it puts you in a very tricky situation.
I think it kind of goes back to your question of like, why would you use a recruiter? That's definitely like the chasing and the kind of measuring the temperature with doing that, and also having like a third party involved, which allows you to have those difficult conversations without it feeling that you're uncomfortable to do that yourself, and also having somebody to be like, I wouldn't quite approach it in that way, let me handle the timing of it, especially when they have lots of other firms that they're speaking to at the same time, because a part of a candidate going to market is to make sure that they've done enough due diligence. So they need to speak to more than one firm often to feel that they've done that. And it's not something personal against their primary firm that they've wanted to approach. But I think speaking to more than one firm helps them to positively choose that option.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly. So if you are speaking to lots of firms and you're doing it directly, firstly, I mean, even the basics of the admin of making sure, like getting the interviews scheduled, making sure that you've got enough time in between them. Like, I know that sounds really dull, but I do try to make sure that they've got enough bandwidth and enough space in between to properly prepare. But also it's much more uncomfortable to say like, I know I really like you guys, but there's also this other firm that I also really like. And I think it's provided that we as the agency are being as open and honest with the firms and managing expectations, it means that can happen without burning bridges, which, the market is obviously big, but for what these people do is often very small, and you will cross paths again. So using us, we're used to having these kind of conversations all of the time. Using us to manage expectations is really helpful. But I think it's also kind of rewinding the clock. We've obviously spoken a little bit about interview prep. It's also talking about CV preparation, as you've mentioned. But I think it's also helping somebody understand, what is it exactly that I'm looking for? Blue sky thinking. What do I want?
Well, Valentina, thank you so much for joining me. You've been a great first guest for
the
show.
The inaugural show. This is so exciting. Thank you so much.
Thanks.